Namaskar. Welcome to this lecture series of OUSRHH, Organization of Unearthing Suppressed Realities of Hindustani History. And in this lecture, I continue a second part of my previous lecture on Russia and American War. Yes, not Russia and Ukraine, but Russia and American War. Immediately, when Russian forces moved into Ukraine for its own security reasons, which I have justified, that the security reasons were fully justified for Russia, the Americans started supporting Ukraine along with NATO and declared an economic blockade of Soviet Union, which they have been doing of many other countries like Iran for a long time. India also faced American blockade at a time, economic blockade at a time. And this they think is a very strong weapon, which Biden thought and his advisors thought will be against Russia and Russia will crumble down. In fact, this economic blockade has boomeranged on Europe, not America. America is happy that if it boomerangs on Europe, because then the European dependence is more on America, not only for armaments, not only for protection of a nuclear war, but also in terms of food grains, also in terms of energy and many other aspects. Now, how did the European countries react to that against Russia? Some said, we will continue with the gas and energy, these supplies, oil supplies from Russia. Some said, we will stop it after 2 months, 3 months. And now, the winter is there. And the gas crisis which Europe faces in winter to heat up Europe has become a major concern for the European countries. And not only gas, the other is the food crisis. Because Ukraine, Russia, they were big suppliers of wheat to Europe. And today it is not there. Now here I want to expose the American hypocrisy. Let's talk of the wheat trade. America is a big producer of wheat. America is a big exporter of wheat. So if wheat from Ukraine side has stopped, why isn't America sending wheat to Europe? Why? I ask this question. It's mind-boggling. And the only reason I find is that here too, the shrewd Americans, they want to make money. So are they waiting for the European food crisis to go to a level where the prices will go too high, and then only they will supply wheat to Europe? I am reminded of Churchill, the brute of Second World War, who made a man-made famine in India in the early 40s. To check the Japanese advance, he stopped all boat movement in Bengal, Odisha, parts of Assam, which affected the supply of food grains because that was the most important mode of transportation. And people started dying of hunger. They were offered by Bose through Azad Hind Sarkar surplus rice from Burma, which Azad Hind Sarkar had for the relief of the people in Bengal. Churchill said no. And not only that, There were Australian ships laden with food grains at the Calcutta harbour. And instead of helping the dying millions, Churchill moved those ships to Europe, diverted those food grains to Europe. And millions died in Bengal famine in India. Is Biden imitating Churchill in terms of food crisis in Europe? A treaty was done. Ships from Ukraine will be allowed with food grains. And what do you do in the cover of that? In the cover of that, you attack the Russian Navy in Black Sea. So Russia withdraws. So the way Ukraine has been ruined, the same way they want to ruin certain European countries. Moldova, begging to be a part of NATO. No by NATO. But you want to arm Moldova. So after Ukraine, do you find this happening to Moldova? You are using Norway. All these small countries. And who is economically benefiting? America, America, America. With these economic benefits. They thought that by imposing economic sanctions on Russia, like Iran, they will be able to gain their objectives. Iran has stood and Russia has stood. That's why the ruble is going up. And if you look at the trade figures of Russia in this chart, how many countries of NATO and Europe are still trading with Russia? The levels of trade might have declined, the figures might have declined, but how much they are doing? And on the other hand, arming Ukraine. So this kind of a thing on food crisis. No one questioned in UN. No one is raising this. Okay, why America can't send food grains to this? Even Australia. Australia is a strong wheat producing country. Now, similarly come to the gas part. Europe can't survive without Russian gas this winter. And mind it, Russia has had two very strong generals in the past. General Winter and General Snow. Napoleon in 1812 had moved with an army of about 450,000 people. And Russians even withdrew from Moscow also, and just waited for the winter season to come. And when the winters came, Napoleon's supplies were cut. They were not accustomed to that kind of a winter. And out of that army, only 120,000 survived and came back. I think more than 129,000 even horses died in that. The second example of General Winter and General Snow was the Second World War, when Hitler attacked. Went from the St. Petersburg side and then towards Moscow, and same tactic was done by Russians. Soviet Union at that time, they withdrew. The Germans were celebrating that victory, and then came the attack of General Snow and General Winter. And these two generals, when the Russian offensive started, brought victory to Russians, who were the first to reach Berlin. And this journal Winter and journal Snow are again going to play a major role in the next 2 months in this war, which I call the American-Russian war. By provoking Ukraine, arming Ukraine, Ukraine is ruined today. Russia retaliated after the attacks in Crimea on their ships, on the bridge. And what is the condition in Ukraine? No electricity, no water. And yesterday even there was news that their defense thing has been hacked by the Russian hackers. And they were crying, why not? Why won't they hack? War is war. Like the civilian thing they said. You yourself made this statement, Zelensky, that our civilians are now a fighting force. They are fighting the Russians. So naturally, civilians will be targeted. And no one in the world is talking of peace. The UN has become a totally impotent body. All sides with the American interests. Always. That Nuclear and Energy Commission, they are going to give that report on the biggest nuclear power station over there, where the war is going on. What is his name? Levesky. There. I am reading the report right now. Ukraine is doing nothing, Ukraine is clean, Ukraine has no dirty bomb. Like a coward, America only sends weapons. Mercenaries won't send its direct soldiers. Why? Think over it. Because the American population at home can't see coffins coming back to America of its soldiers. They have seen this in Vietnam, they have seen this in Iraq crisis, they have seen this in Afghanistan. And the public is not in favor of that. Voices are being raised. I am slightly surprised why the situation came to this level. Because during Trump's time, the relations were worse with China, with Russia, but it never came to this stage of war. And this duplicate foreign policy. See in Taiwan, America won't recognize Taiwan as an independent country, but will arm Taiwan, provoke China. What was the sense in sending that Nancy to Taiwan when you knew that this will escalate the situation? Which clearly means that America wants to escalate the situation. To prove to the world that they are the bulldogs of the world, they can do anything in the world. Any democracy they can suppress, any government they can get changed through their CIA, putting up internal revolts, and all countries should submit to the American dominance. This psychology of American economic dominance, you see in the world history, that any regime in the world which won't toe their line, they will see to it that that regime goes away. That's what my fear for India. But India will fight it out. We didn't stop taking oil from Russia. And why should we? The stand taken was a strong stand by India in its own national interests. So now America will adopt dirty tactics against India, knowing fully well that if America goes to war with China, they will need India's support. But still they want to play dirty, they want to arm Pakistan against us and use it as a blackmailing technique for the Indian government. I think they are living in a fool's paradise. Because India is not that the India of 2006 that you put up economic sanctions on Iran and India stopped buying oil from Iran. The government is different. The thinking is different. So America wants to perpetuate this economic crisis in Europe. And with European countries supplying their armaments to Ukraine, even their arms stocks are going to die. This is what's happening. So who benefits? Again, arms are to be brought by these European countries to be bought from American armament industry. So that's what America wants. And that's why America doesn't want the war zones to end. Maybe I'll come to another lecture on Ukraine. But I've tried to explain that who is the real culprit of this war. I'm not justifying Russian attack on Ukraine. I'm not justifying the loss of human life in this war. We, India, have always stood for peace. But who is talking of peace besides us? Thank you. Namaskar.